This video is sponsored by Squarespace, more about them later. Water type only playthroughs are usually among the easiest monotype runs since there are often so many eligible encounters, but the Pokédex in Black and White has a record low number of water type evolution lines with only 8, or 9 if you count this thing, but I don't. At this point, you probably know what a hardcore Nuzlocke is, so let's get right to choosing my starter Pokemon, Mojito the Oshawott. And poor little Mojito has got his work cut out for him, because he's our only encounter until after the first gym badge. Unlike the previous 4 generations, where the first gym leader uses rock types, in Black and White, Mojito will be going toe-to-toe with Silen's grass-type Pansage, a sadistic monster with a thirst for blood and no remorse for ending an untold number of lives. Oh, and there's a Lillipup too. Against this objectively adorable mother fluffer, the hope is that he'll waste so much time going for workup that we can get the KO without taking too much damage. But we also need to set up a Focus Energy, which will boost my critical hit rate to 25%. This is absolutely necessary for dealing with the sinister Simian. A few turns later, Mojito has managed to take out Lillipup with over half his HP remaining. So as we gain a level, it's time to take on Pansage. He goes for a workup, which lets Mojito fire off a Tail Whip to lower his defense. Pansage goes for another workup, letting Mojito get in a hit that would have instantly ended the fight with a crit. But since there was no crit to be found, Mojito winds up on the wrong end of a very nasty, super effective Vine Whip, and just like that, attempt 1 is over. We got pretty close though, and with a little bit more luck, I'm confident that Mojito can come out on top. With such a low level cap and so many mandatory battles, it's difficult to get any meaningful EVs on my budding samurai, though I can at least pump him up with attack EVs by culling through the Lillipup and Patrat populations that reside in Route 1. But no matter how many attack EVs I get, it kinda just comes down to whether Mojito can land a timely critical hit. But attempt after attempt, I find myself in the same place, still at the restaurant, right where you left me. And as more and more versions of my po-faced partner fall, it feels like I'll have no choice but to stay here forever. In order to win this fight, a lot has to go my way, and for a long time, it doesn't. Lillipup does too much damage before going down, Pansage lands a critical hit, or in a particularly embarrassing attempt, Lillipup outspeeds, flinches Mojito with Bite twice, and kills him before we even get a glimpse at the Green Devil. That one was pretty demoralizing. There's nothing else to do but keep trying though, and on attempt 9, we finally find a bit of luck. After a Focus Energy, Mojito Nueve immediately lands a critical hit water gun, giving us the opportunity to take out Lillipup without losing a single tick of HP. A potion doesn't bring our furry foe back to full HP, so even if we hadn't gotten a second critical hit here, we would have been right as rain. So as Pansage comes in, I'm feeling great. He sets up a workup and then I immediately go for a tackle. After a few attempts, I realized that going for Tail Whip was a waste of a turn, since the more I go for attacks, the more likely I am to land at least one critical hit. Vine Whip then hits Mojito for 20 HP, and since his second tackle doesn't crit, it all comes down to this. Does Pansage get the high roll and knock out Mojito, or do we live and take him out with one last tackle? With 1 HP in a dream, Mojito Nueve lives and sends the malevolent monkey to his grave, meaning that after 9 painful attempts of watching my sweet little boy die, Mojito has made it through the very first gym battle of the challenge. But alas, Mojito Nueve's trials have only just begun, for the very next gym leader brings an even scarier challenge. Lenora, the normal type trainer, threatens my sweet otter with an intimidating herdier, I don't see it either, and an at least relatively speaking, powerful watchhog with access to terrifying moves like Retaliate and Hypnosis. Even in his new all-blue form, Mojito Nueve cannot face down these 2 villains alone. He's gonna need help, and it comes in the very puntable form of a Timpole. Why is he making the same face as that Kevin James meme? Now, Mudslide the Timpole may not be the strongest Pokemon, or the most defensive, and sure, he looks like an aquatic offspring of Mr. Electric, but he has one thing going for him, and that is that he exists. Just by existing, Mudslide provides the incredibly useful purpose of eating Herdier's Intimidate so that Mojito Nueve isn't sitting at -1 attack for the entire battle. Mudslide is also a pretty speedy son of a gun, which lets him nail Herdier with a Bubble Beam before taking a massive chunk of damage from takedown. But that's perfectly fine because now it's off to Mojito, who has been pre-damaged so that a takedown from Herdier will bring him below a third of his HP. Why is that important? Well, because now Mojito is in Torrent range, meaning that his water moves get a 50% boost in damage. With Rock Smash, we're able to comfortably two-shot Herdier as Lenora tries to heal. So with the Schnauzer taken care of, all that's left is Watchog. But by holding a water gem farmed from Wellspring Cave, Mojito Nueve is able to outspeed and nail the Chubby Cheek Chipmunk with a single Torrent-boosted Razor Shell, narrowly winning us the second gym badge. Obviously, I needed to dodge 2 crits there, and Razor Shell has 95% accuracy, which might as well be 50%, so I did get lucky. But if there's a way to do this fight without getting lucky and risking a few crits, I don't know it. What I do know is that you should consider subscribing to the channel. You might think you already are, but there's a pretty good chance you're not, and it really helps me out. Anyways, if you thought my Lenora strat was sketchy, wait until you see what I cooked up for the next gym leader, Berg, whose Grass-type ace and Leavanny is easily our biggest threat yet. He's speedy, defensively bulky, and threatens with Razor Leafs off of a nasty 103 base attack stat. At first glance, Berg looks impossible with just Mojito Nueve and Mudslide, especially since Electric Jr. won't even evolve before the level cap. Now, I can catch a quiet-natured Panpour from Lost Lorn Forest, and with a Water Stone, Mai Tai is able to evolve into Simipour, but with Scald as his only real damaging move, unless I want to rely on a 30% chance to burn, he and his paper-thin defenses aren't going to be much help against Leavanny. So I've got to get creative, and this starts by leading with Mudslide into Berg's Whirlipede. And his job is to spam Growl to lower Whirlipede's attack until he loses enough HP to be in range to a critical hit, which happens after 2 Growls because, as I've already mentioned, Mudslide is very frail and very puntable. Like, don't you just want to score a field goal with this guy? I switch out to Mai Tai, who's able to lower Whirlipede's defense with Leer. An annoying Screech means it's really only safe to fire off 1 more, lest Mai Tai finds himself on the end of a critical hit. But with Whirlipede at -2 attack and -2 defense, it's time for Mojito Nueve to take the stage. But coming in on a Screech is unideal, so I immediately go back into Mai Tai. On the second try, Mojito Nueve comes in on a super soft Strugel Boojel, made even softer by our held Eviolite. So now we get to work. I have Mojito go for Fury Cutter, a 20 base power bug type move that doubles in power after each subsequent use until it reaches a base power of 160. If we can successfully get Fury Cutter to full power, we'll be able to cleanly one-shot Leavanny when she comes in. The only issue is that Fury Cutter has 95% accuracy, which, jokes aside, really isn't that likely to miss. Like, it's lower than the chance of a critical hit. But the odds of connecting with 5 Fury Cutters in a row is only 77%. Lower odds than hitting a single Stone Edge. So, as I continue to click Fury Cutter, each turn gets more and more stressful. 1 miss here, and we're in a lot of trouble, and also very likely back to dealing with Silence Pansage. But, against all odds, 4 Fury Cutters connect, Whirlipede falls, and we're at full power as Leavanny comes out, which means that all we need to do is connect with 1 last Fury Cutter. Viva Mojito Nueve! The beautiful bastard did it! Leavanny has been defeated, and by taking care of Dwebble with a few water pulses, we've defeated Berg and won the 3rd gym badge, finally getting us past the most challenging trio of early game gym leaders I've ever had to face in a challenge run. Now that we can relax a little, it's the perfect time to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. And before you think about hitting that fast forward button, this time I'm gonna let Poppy do the entire sponsorship segment. Take it away, Pop.
Squarespace is an online platform that helps you build and manage your own website. Whether that's an online store for your corgi business or a personal blog for your corgi thoughts. Using their all-in-one platform and customizable templates, it's easy to create professional and polished websites. And with their new Fluid Engine design system featuring drag-and-drop technology, it's faster than ever before to fine-tune every single detail of your website. For example, my daddy used Squarespace to launch PoppyHG.com, the only destination to find curated pictures of me. And if you're feeling nice, you can even give me a treat through our new donation button, which was easy to set up with Squarespace's detailed guides. And Squarespace has a ton of other really useful features, like analytic information about the traffic of your website and Squarespace member areas, which can be used to connect with audiences and create exclusive members-only content. So if you're looking to start a website for your business or hobby, or your own corgi, then you gots to check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your website, you can use our custom link to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now I gotta go take a big old nap right on Daddy's pillow.
Okay, incredibly adorable and definitely not annoying sponsorship segments aside, I know what you're probably thinking. The next gym leader, Elisa, uses electric type Pokemon, and water types have a bad matchup into electric type Pokemon. But with evolution, Mudslide gains a seemingly painful tumor and an incredibly useful secondary ground type, the latter of which effectively trivializes Elisa's entire team. Also, I revived a fossil into Manhattan the Tirtuga, but since he has Solid Rock instead of Sturdy, he's pretty useless for this fight. Anyways, with Aqua Ring, a held Eviolite, and Rest, Mudslide is able to deal with all three of Elisa's Pokemon. Her Emolgas are a little annoying since Mudslide can't learn a Rock-type move and we have to rely on Bubble Beam, but even so, back-to-back critical hits are the only thing that could really do us in, and since that doesn't happen, a few turns later, we're victorious and Gym Badge number 4 is ours. On our way to Driftvale City, I can catch my 5th team member, a Ducklet named Paloma. It's really becoming quite the boys club in here, huh? Ducklet is a terrible Pokemon with virtually nothing to make him stand out. In a generation chock full of power creep and ridiculously strong Pokemon, I have no idea how they could do Ducklet and Swanna so unbelievably dirty. They gave them a Gen 2 stat spread, a mediocre move pool, and the most boring abilities you could possibly imagine. Keen Eye and Big Pecs on a bird Pokemon? Whose Nepo hire came up with that $1 million idea? Oh, and a water type with hydration as its hidden ability. Man, I hope no one pulled a muscle during that difficult brainstorm session. Anyways, for the first time all playthrough, we have a favorable matchup against the gym leader. Since Clay uses ground types, Maitai kills his lead Krokorok with a single Scald, and then does the same thing to his Ace Excadrill. Clay's got a Palpitoad of his own, but he too is no match for a Scald, which misses out on the clean KO, but does get a burn that after a now nerfed Bulldoze, gets the KO and wins us by far the easiest battle of the run. And despite still having a team mostly filled with NFEs, Skyla isn't much of a problem either. Manhattan easily takes care of her Swoobat, Paloma, now a Swanna, beats his mirror match with a few air slashes, and then Manhattan comes back in to wall Skyla's Unpheasant and get the kill with a few smackdowns, winning us badge number 6. That means that at long last, we can head to Twist Mountain to challenge Charon. Like the other 13 rival fights up until this point, this battle is not particularly memorable or difficult. Charon's only potentially dangerous Pokemon is his starter, but by using Workup with Maitai against his lead, we can always just take him out in one shot. The most important part of this battle is that kicking Charon's ass 6 ways from Sunday is enough to entertain Alder, who finally gives me the HM for Surf. Not only does that give me the most reliable special water-type move in the game, I can also head to Route 18 and pick up the HM for Waterfall, the most reliable physical water-type move in the game. Side note, how does Seismitoad not learn Waterfall? Like, what the heck? Access to Surf also means that I can catch the final 3 encounters in the run. First up is Gimlet the Frillish. Once he evolves, he'll be an incredible tank, though the minus defense nature is a bit of a bummer. Fortunately, our next encounter, Margarita the Alomomala, is very physically bulky and gets access to Wish. Unfortunately, she's an otherwise pretty lousy Pokemon, but at least we finally got a lady on the team. Our last encounter is absolutely also our least important encounter because it's Painkiller the Basculin. But she's not just a frail, useless fish, she's also one of the worst IV'd Pokemon I have ever encountered. Look at these IVs. And if you don't know what IVs are, just take my word for it. Painkiller isn't a bottom of the barrel Pokemon. She's not even in the barrel. The barrel is up in space, and Painkiller is down on Earth trying to pull open a push door. Anyways, with Manhattan having finally evolved into Caracosta, Bryson the Ice-type gym leader, much like the last two gym leaders, is pretty trivial. A few Rock Slides take care of his Vanillish, a combination of Rock Slide and a Priority Aqua Jet deal with the unhygienic bear, and then Mojito Nueve shatters the physically frail Cryogonal with a few waterfalls. Pretty simple stuff, that's badge number 7. But that closes out the trivial mid-game because from here on out, the fights are going to get tougher and tougher, and I'm going to need to be a bit more creative. Starting first with the fight against the final gym leader Drayden, whose dragon types all resist our stab water moves. And without Ice Beam or the existence of fairy types, I've really only got one choice, Blizzard Spam, which really needs Hail to be viable. Unfortunately, Drayden's lead Fracture knows Dragon Dance, so I have to be incredibly careful about how I set up Hail. I start by sending out Paloma, who can use Feather Dance to lower Fracture's attack stat faster than he can raise it with Dragon Dance. After a few turns of this, I decided it's safe to switch into Margarita, who unfortunately gets nailed by a Dragon Tail, forcing her out and bringing Mai Tai in. But we really need Margarita in, so Fracture gets off a free Dragon Dance as we switch back. Doesn't really matter though because he's still well below neutral. Another Dragon Dance on the following turn means that Margarita can set up Hail, which with her held Icy Rock will last for 8 full turns. This means that I can afford to stay in for another turn, tank a Dragon Rage, and hit Fracture with a Blizzard that doesn't kill thanks to our bulky fish's atrocious 40 base special attack stat. But it does do enough to bring the dentally challenged dragon into the red after Hail Chip, which ensures us a safe switch into Manhattan as Drayden heals. On the following turn, we can tank a Dragon Rage and set up a Shell Smash, which drops our defenses but doubles our attack and speed stats. In other words, it's a truly filthy setup move, especially if Manhattan happened to have Sturdy. Fracture still outspeeds, so he gets off one more Dragon Rage, but then we can finally take him out with a Blizzard. And from here, Manhattan is free to one-shot Druddigon and Haxorus with another 2 Blizzards, winning us the 8th gym badge with 16 HP to spare. That means that it's off to the Pokemon League, where the final challenges of the run await. It's a bit weird to say this, given that we're on attempt 9, but technically this has been a deathless run, and I'll be doing everything in my power to keep all of my babies safe to the very end. The 6 Pokemon I'm bringing to the Elite Four should not be a surprise to anyone. I'm hoping that the combination of Mojito Nueve, Mudslide, Mai Tai, Manhattan, Paloma, and Gimlet will be the perfect jungle juice concoction to take out all of the threats the Elite Four has to offer, and also make someone with even the hardiest of livers very violently ill. So let's find out if they've got what it takes. First up is Grimsley, the easiest of the batch for our team to handle. With Drain Punch, Mudslide is able to work his way through Grimsley's Scrafty without any problems whatsoever. A Surf, ironically, drowns his Gator, and then Bisharp falls to a combination of Surf and Drain Punch. Liepard is last, but since Mudslide was intimidated by Crocodile, we have to switch around a bit, and it's Paloma who ultimately gets the final kill of the fight. But that was always going to be pretty easy. Next is Marshall, who leads with a very bulky throw, so I lead with my strongest special attacker to get a 2-hit kill with Surf. The second Sesame Street reject is next, which means it's off to Mudslide on a Stone Edge that misses. Since it misses, I stay in to nail Tobias with a Bulldoze to lower his speed. Then it's off to Gimlet on a Karate Chop. We outspeed on the following turn, but just barely miss out on the KO with a Surf. Bit of a bummer since it means Sock can fire off a Stone Edge, but Cursed Body ends up activating, meaning that even though Marshall heals, Gimlet can use Recover to get back to full HP, and then comfortably get the KO with 2 more Surfs, as Sock is forced to just use Grass Knot. Not too shabby. Conkeldurr comes in next, so Gimlet nails him with a Surf for well over 50%. Our held Shell Bell recovers just a smidge of HP, and then Stone Edge leaves Gimlet with just 4 HP after a critical hit. Honestly, I slapped Shell Bell onto Gimlet because I could not come up with a better item. I never would have guessed that it would save my ass, because if Gimlet goes down here, this run is completely over. But with that clutch survival, Gimlet can finish off Conkeldurr with another Surf. And then against Marshall's final Pokemon Mienshao, I first switch to Mudslide on a Rock Slide, and then Paloma on a now baited high jump kick. With that, we can outspeed and get the clean kill with a Flying Gem boosted Air Slash, winning us the second battle of the Elite Four. But now it's time for the tricky fights and proof that we'd be totally screwed if Gimlet went down to that Stone Edge. Caitlin's lead Reuniclus knows Thunder and Energy Ball, which just rip through my entire team. It's only by a small miracle that she has a rash nature, which lowers her special defense, meaning that Gimlet can get a clean KO with a Ghost Gem boosted Shadow Ball. Gothitelle is second and knows Thunderbolt, but by another small miracle, she has a relaxed nature, so Gimlet can outspeed and nail her with another nasty Shadow Ball. And since we're also quite bulky, we can kinda tank at least one Thunderbolt, meaning that the Hot Topic Manager falls on the following turn, and Gimlet remains at over half health. That brings in Musharna third, so I just keep plugging away with Shadow Ball. And Musharna joins in on the party too, but without Stab, Gimlet was safe to even a critical hit, and on the following turn, down goes the Sleepy Ungulate. Last is Sigilyph, so it's finally time for Gimlet to dip. Mai Tai comes in on a neutral Shadow Ball, and then retaliates with a massive Water Gem boosted Surf for a clean KO, winning us the battle. Which means that Chantel is the Elite Four's last stand. She leads with Cofagrigus, and with access to Grass Knot, I decide that the best thing to do is knock her out in one shot with another Ghost Gem boosted Shadow Ball from Gimlet. He's been plowing through massive chunks of this Elite Four, so he's managed to work his way all the way up to level 53, which gives me a very solid level advantage in the mirror match against Chantel's own Jellicent. We outspeed and can nail her with a massive Shadow Ball before she retaliates with her own, significantly weaker one. Now, I could obviously take the kill here, but once Jellicent goes down, Chandelure will come out. And since she outspeeds Gimlet, and threatens with a clean one-hit kill into all of my other Pokemon if she crits with Shadow Ball, it's actually better to kill Jellicent with something that is able to outspeed and one-shot Chandelure as well. The only problem is that our Cursed Body disabled Jellicent's Shadow Ball, which means she'll now go for Energy Ball, which no longer gives me a safe switch. So I first actually have to stall out my own Cursed Body by spamming Recover, which could get ugly if Jellicent gets a special defense drop. But since she doesn't, after she's no longer disabled, I switch to Mojito Nueve, who easily tanks a neutral Shadow Ball. And then I forgot to teach him Grass Knot. Well, crap. Time for Plan B, aka Risk the Duck. Paloma comes in on a neutral Energy Ball. If she doesn't get the KO here, we're gonna be in quite a bit of trouble since Chantel will heal. But Paloma clutches up and lands a critical hit Air Slash for a clean KO. I really don't know if that crit mattered, but either way, I go unpunished for a very stupid mistake. As Chandelure comes out, Paloma is free to nail her with a massive Water Gem boosted Surf for the one-shot. Chantel's then left with her Golurk, but by switching to Mai Tai as the Behemoth goes for Curse, we're free to take the KO on the following turn, winning us the final battle of the Elite Four. But now it's time to face off against the king of Team Plasma. The illogically placed castle emerges from the ground, signaling that the ultimate challenge of the run is upon us. The back-to-back battles against N and Ghetsis are tricky, no doubt. Both of their teams are filled with imposing threats, including the mighty legendary dragon Zekrom. But before we get there, I can head to the PC and make a change to the team. Mai Tai is out, and believe it or not, Margarita is in. With that, it's time to save the world and win this run, or die trying. and immediately kicks things off with Zekrom, and I lead with Gimlet, though this is actually to deal with Ghetsis' lead since they need to be the same for both fights. For now, Gimlet goes out, and Mudslide can come in safely on a Fusion Bolt. Then Zekrom wastes a turn setting up Light Screen, which means we can hit them with a Bulldoze for decent damage and to lower their speed. This means that Mudslide can now outspeed and take to the tunnels to dodge a scary Giga Impact. As we surface on the following turn, Dig proves to be just enough to knock out N's biggest threat. That brings in Kling Klang next, so I hit them with another super effective Bulldoze. The pile of sentient gears whiffs a metal sound, so I take the clean KO with another Bulldoze. This is going great. Vanillix comes in third, but my hunch is that this is a disguised Zoroark, who has the highest base power move of the remaining Pokemon left with Focus Blast at 120 base power. But in Generation 5, Blizzard also has a base power of 120, and since Vanillux is first in the team order, he comes out first, so this is actually a Vanillux. Also, based on the team order, Zoroark wouldn't even be disguised as Vanillix, so this was just a complete misplay on my part. Though thankfully it goes relatively unpunished as Mudslide dodges the critical hit. I switch to Gimlet on a second Blizzard, which only does a small chunk of damage. And then on the following turn, a Surf leaves the double scoop ice cream with a Sliver, meaning he can set up Hail. So, N heals, but Gimlet, trying to even further cement his late game MVP status, murks him with a single critical hit Surf. So next is Caracosta. I switch to Mojito Nueve on a relatively soft crunch, and then N plays himself since the hail that he set up breaks Caracosta's sturdy. This means that we can get a clean one-shot with Grass Knot, which this time I did indeed remember to teach Mojito. N's fifth Pokemon is Zoroark, so it's off to Paloma on a resisted Focus Blast. But now I gotta risk him to a critical hit. Surf isn't enough for the one-shot, even with the Water Gem, so as Zoroark survives with a Sliver, I brace for impact. Night Slash comes out, and Paloma lives! Another Surf drowns the Trickster and leaves N with just his prehistoric chicken. But evolution is a hell of a drug, and Paloma proves to be the best bird by outspeeding his ancient ancestor and getting a clean one-hit kill with another Surf. N's been defeated, and we are just one battle away from winning this challenge completely deathless. But Ghetsis is gonna do his best to make that as hard as possible. He leads with another Kofagrigus, so just like before, Gimlet nails him with a Ghost Gem boosted Shadow Ball for the immediate one-shot. That brings in Bouffalant with Wild Charge, so it's off to Mudslide. Then it's back to Gimlet on the now baited Head Charge. And since both of these moves have 15 PP, I can repeat this back and forth switching until Bouffalant is forced to use his remaining two moves, Earthquake and Poison Jab. With that, Mudslide is able to pretty comfortably knock out Bouffalant with a few Drain Punches, though we do get poisoned in the process, which definitely sucks. Nevertheless, with Bouffalant down, Ghetsis brings in his ace, Hydreigon, third. So it's back into Gimlet on a Surf, and then it's time for probably the riskiest play of the entire game. Hydreigon goes for Dragon Pulse, since he doesn't actually know a Dark-type move. It still does good damage though, but we're at least bulky enough to tank the hit and connect with a 75% accurate Will-O-Wisp. A miss there would have been pretty bad, but now I can spam Recover as Hydreigon goes for Dragon Pulse and slowly loses HP from Burn. This does risk Gimlet to a poorly timed critical hit a couple times, but thankfully the only time Hydreigon lands a crit is when Gimlet is at high enough HP to survive the hit. And eventually Kerr's body activates, disabling Dragon Pulse and forcing Hydreigon to use Fire Blast, which ironically gets the burn as well. But regardless, a few turns later, Gimlet brings Hydreigon into the red with a Surf, and burn damage finishes him off. So fourth is Electros, and with Mudslide poisoned at half HP, this fella has the potential to do some pretty serious damage to my team. But that's where Margarita comes into play. With her massive HP stat and solid physical defense, she can comfortably tank a few non-critical hit Wild Charges. And since she's wearing a rocky helmet, Electros takes a massive amount of damage from each hit. Plus, we've got Wish and Protect for healing, so all we gotta do is pray that Electros doesn't land a critical hit before taking himself out. As Wish brings Margarita back to over 50%, it looks like one more will do the job. Wild Charge comes out, and Margarita holds, though the chip damage is just barely not enough to get the KO. but it's fine because we go for another wish. And by switching to Mudslide on another wild charge, our Thicky Fishy's wish brings him all the way back to full HP, minus the poison damage. Then we can outspeed and take the KO on Electros with the Drain Punch. So Getsis brings out his own Seismitoad 5th for the last honor battle of the run. It's short-lived though, because I immediately switched to Mojito Nueve on an Earthquake, who proceeds to get the one-shot with Grass Knot on the following turn. So the final threat of the run is Bisharp, who unfortunately does still threaten us with a potential KO. I go to Manhattan on a strong Night Slash. We can nail him with a few waterfalls while tanking non-critical hit Night Slashes, but they simply don't do enough damage, and with Manhattan quickly falling into KO range, I gotta switch out and risk one last critical hit. So Mudslide comes in, and Bisharp just goes for Stone Edge. Which means that with one final Drain Punch, Bisharp goes down, winning us not just the battle against Getsis, but the entire run. That was a really fun challenge, and I had a blast crafting the strategies for the various seemingly impossible threats we had to face, especially in the early game. My Pokemon all did an incredible job dodging the bad RNG that would have completely ruined this run. It's crazy to me that even years after my first video, these monotype runs still make me sweat and can get my heart rate going. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, it'd be great if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Or don't, I don't know. But regardless, stay tuned for more Nuzlocke videos, and until then, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.